to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome in. It's June 3rd here. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. We got Borg, Betz, and Jason.
Finally got a baller on here. Finally. People, they unsubscribed to Jason because they were just like tired of Borg and Betz.
Of course they did, because I would have too. But they're back now, and they're back now because the UDK is out. This last month, we've been working hard. We've been recording all these videos. We've been doing everything to get the Ultimate Draft Kit released. And so that's why you guys lifted this show upon your shoulders and collapsed under its weight.
Correct.
Was because we were busy doing the real work. But that's launched. It's awesome. The feedback has been great. And I say all that, but you guys do so much work. You guys are grinding the whole month of May as well. All of our sweat and tears and pride and joy, they're all in the UDK. It's all available. It's all up. Not just the Dynasty version, but the whole thing now. UltimateDraftKit.com. Make sure you get it because you need it.
You're right in a lot of ways. And I think of over the years, a lot of you guys listening, you listen to footballers for more than a decade, but think about how many iterations of the draft kit you've had, Jason, the different versions, the different upgrades, and then just think about where we're at now, not just the total words and content, the number of videos, but then the way that we update everything is when trades go through. We talk about Myles Garrett, we talk about AJ Brown. It's everything that we do is live and available there, and including the projections. You and I on the back end bets always see, here's what Jason did going into his stat doc and actually adjusting the target shares and making sure that things actually are right, as opposed to just, here's where I feel like AJ Brown should go. So those are the things that I think I feel most proud of with the draft kit, that in real time we are adjusting things.
This is the first year I feel it was released obviously on June 1st. And usually when it's released, it's the dead period of kind of NFL window. So it's all right, it'll be released. And then when we get in training camp, this thing is updated as soon as we get news. And it was within hours of being released, we got very big news, obviously, with AJ Brown being traded at Myles Garrett, which I don't know if that affected anything on your guys' end, Jason, from a projection standpoint on the Rams offense, just because of holy crap, the Rams defense might just be unbelievable. But the projections were updated immediately.
Yes, it didn't change my stats. I thought about it, but I do think it changes kind of my upside hope and guys like Concepcion, just the fact that if the defense is really, really good and they are holding the other team to 9 points by the end of the game, then the passing work might go down and the ceiling for Concepcion is lower. I didn't change the median outcome projections, but I do. It's a mental change where I go, okay, maybe, but it's still the Browns.
Yes.
And that's the big problem.
We will get to talk about Concepcion today because we will be playing a Dynasty ADP Price Check game. And whenever we have games on this show, I always feel bad because I have all the answers. I have them in front of me.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, of course. And so I make sure to make you guys feel dumb.
Yeah, for this game. Got it. I thought you meant just in life and for fantasy football.
I am very short on a lot of things, but it gives me great pleasure to basically have things in front of me and you guys kind of squirm I don't want to give a dumb answer, but here's my gut reaction.
It's always hard. It sucks. These games suck to be on this side of it.
Yeah. So we'll talk about Concepcion's ADP, some different players that I feel will be good discussion points. But like Jason mentioned, everything's updated at UltimateDraftKit.com. I do have a quick question, which essentially is a game as well, and you can play along if you're listening with us or watching on YouTube. This is a who am I question. So I'm going to read out a clue, and when you guys have an answer locked in, let's do it, and I think it'll lead to a good discussion. So clue number one, the last time that I was a top 8 player at my position was 2023.
We're just guessing the player. That's what this game is?
That's what this game is.
Right.
Who am I? And don't say it out loud, but when you feel like you got the answer, move on. Or if you have any thoughts 2023 was a couple years ago.
2023. So we just finished 25. 24, 23. So 3
It's a
years
lifetime
ago,
in the NFL.
they were top 8 at the position. Okay.
All right, next one.
Could be an old guy now.
Could be a little bit older. Let's go with clue number 2. I am coming off a season where I set a career low in rushing touchdowns.
Okay, career low in rushing.
So how's this player trending for you guys for 2026?
I've got my
Oh, wow.
guess already.
I do not.
Jason's writing it down in his left-handed penmanship form.
Yeah.
Okay.
So bad handwriting.
Okay.
So obviously the trend is not great. Is what you want
Obviously,
us to
the
think.
trend seems
Yeah, that's what he
down.
wants us to think.
And knowing me, where do you think I'm going with this?
That means it's got to be someone that people are excited about for fantasy now, which probably means what I wrote down as well.
Okay, I'll say this. Knowing you guys and knowing our listeners, this is definitely like I'm trying to play with your emotions here because I think this is a player that we all like. So, all right. So far, last time they were top 8 players, 2023. They're coming off a season where they set a career low in rushing touchdowns. Clue number 3, I am entering my age 28 season. Okay, so that kind of narrows who this player is, where they're at in their career. If they're age 28, you probably can guess they're not on their first contract, obviously. Any good vibes, Betz?
I think I have a name or two that I'm considering. I don't want to lock it in yet, but I've got a name.
There's somebody at home that is screaming. They are so much smarter than you guys. They understand. But I'm obviously trying to throw you off a little bit. So I'll give you clue number 4, and this might help you. My team has more wins than any other NFL team over the last 4 years.
I still think my answer might be right.
Do you want to lock it in, Jason?
Yeah. At this point, I'll lock it in unless I want to change my mind.
Okay.
Are you gonna tell us who it is?
I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal now or wait.
I say because clue number 5, I think will very much narrow. This is our final clue. We'll very much narrow what it is.
I mean, I will say this: we don't even know the position.
That is very true, Jason.
Go ahead, Jason.
So
go ahead. I have an answer if you want me to give mine.
Well, if you've already got one, I'm going to go.
That was my guess.
that is correct.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, but I did it after 2. I wrote this down a while
After the third, I was like, he kind of seems like 27, 28. I started to feel that, and then when they were like, oh, most wins in the NFL of the last 4 years, I was like, oh, they've been a playoff team. That makes sense.
I second guessed it when lowest rushing touchdowns of his career. I was unsure because like rookie year, like Jalen Hurts, was that he really had more rushing touchdowns rookie year?
I think I said it as a starter, but I tried to use rushing touchdowns to throw people off. I'm thinking running back, but the final clue was the discussion that I want to have is the ballers are split on my Dynasty startup ranking. Jason, you are the most bullish on Jalen Hurts.
I usually am.
And
yeah.
Andy and Mike have him as a back-end quarterback 1. You still have him at QB6. And I checked a couple other sites. He's in that QB6 to 8 range on most sites in rankings. And post A.J. Brown, I want to have the discussion about Jalen Hurts. Betz, you're biased. You can give your thoughts too as Eagles fan. But I feel like in redraft circles, he is a discounted version of the guy that we've been drafting over the last 4 or 5 years. In Dynasty, there is this point right now where post A.J. Brown, people have made up their mind of this is really good for him or this is really bad for him. Or I feel like what a lot of people are like, I don't know what to do. So Jason, do you view him any differently with A.J. Brown out from in terms of like what he's good at in fantasy, which is just running the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it's always bad for a quarterback to lose a great wide receiver. So I don't view A.J. Brown leaving as like, oh, this is going to be so much better for Jalen Hurts. Now he doesn't have a diva in the locker room. He could target whoever's open, doesn't have to get in his head about targeting A.J. Brown. That narrative, I think, is a little bit nonsensical. However, they're not just losing A.J. Brown. They added Mekhi Lemon and Eli Stowers. So as a receiving core, I don't think they are that much worse. More weapons sometimes is better than one big weapon. And like you said, It's really the rushing value that has always been Jalen Hurts' cheat code for fantasy. There's a guy who can go out there and rush for 15 touchdowns with the tush push, which obviously we know is not being eliminated. So I still like, when I statted Jalen Hurts out, I statted him originally without A.J. Brown. Like, I did the whole team automatically without A.J. Brown, and then I just added A.J. Brown in on top because I figured he was going to move. So nothing has changed for me in my belief for Jalen Hurts. I think he is perennially undervalued in fantasy. And the fact that this has become such a defensive run-the-ball team over the last 2 years has people really sour. There's a guy who, he's only going to throw for just over 3,000 yards, and, they don't need to air it out. And that's what we have seen. And that's why he is not valued very high. That doesn't mean that is what's going to happen. Like, that's not usually things go back and forth. We've seen him throw for 3,800 yards. We've seen him throw for 3,700 yards. Like, he can get it done. And there's a different offensive coordinator. My man Sean Mannion's in town. And so we'll see. Obviously, the defense being great will probably mean he's not going to throw for 3,800. But if he comes out this year and throws 3,500 yards, I'm not the least bit surprised.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I mostly agree with Jason's point there, where it does feel like any time in fantasy football, we're always so recency biased. It's like, well, what happened last year? Let's just draft players accordingly. And the Eagles' offense was basically unwatchable every single week because of the scheme issues and among other things, offensive line problems, all those things. And so if you just expect some kind of regression in a good way back to kind of what we've seen with this Eagles offense in the last 3 to 4 years, I still think Jalen Hurts is a very, very strong candidate to put up top 6, top 8 type numbers this year. So for redraft, like, I'm totally in. The question for me on Hurts from a dynasty outlook is, how much do you believe in Mekhi Lemon? Because I think that is a huge factor here. The other thing is the offensive line likely has a lot of turnover probably coming in the next 2-ish years. And this has largely been, I don't know, over the last 3 years considered a top 5 unit. So if they're losing some of these veterans, can they replace them and go down that path? So I could see this kind of trend happening where Hurts is great for another couple years in fantasy, and then you start to get to the age 30 season, you ask yourself, is he going to run as much? Is the offensive line getting worse? At that point, Devonta Smith will be 29, I believe, 30 years old. And so I do think there's a window where the Hurts years will still be very good in the short term. But I do agree, dynasty, if you're somebody that likes to play more than 3 years out, which that's not what we do, but people do like to play that way, I think there are things to consider. But I'm with you, Jason, just this guy's been a prolific fantasy scorer basically since he's been in the NFL, and we really haven't seen much to say that will change in the short term. So if you've got him, I think I'd still feel very confident about him as a locked-in quarterback 1.
Do you guys feel like this is a small buy window? Let's say you're in a Superflex league and you're like, I want one of the elites, but he's not being priced as one of the elites. I'm looking right now, he's behind Jackson Dart, who we think can be that guy. He's obviously young enough to be that guy, but we know Jalen Hurts can score 10 rushing touchdowns. We know that his offense could be top 5 in the league, where Hurts is behind him. He's behind Trevor Lawrence, Patrick Mahomes, whatever you think about him. That's kind of where Hurts is being priced.
Yeah, that's probably where he belongs. And, I would still take Jackson Dart. If this was a dynasty startup,
yeah.
I'd rather draft Dart over Hurts. But that doesn't mean he is not also a buy candidate for a certain team in a certain situation. You've got no quarterback. You don't have to give up a ton for him, and or he is now acquirable. But I will say that, I think it's a 2-year window because his archetype, he's not, even though he's thrown for 3,800 yards, he's not the prolific pocket passer. The entire world knows that. He's not like Josh Allen will not be able to run for 15 touchdowns and 600 or 700 yards in 3 more years. But when that change happens, he could sit there in the pocket and throw for 4,800 yards and 40 touchdowns. That transition, I don't think can happen for Hurts. So dynasty, you're really, if you're buying him, you're in a championship window and you need someone to put you over the top.
Agreed.
And the offensive coordinator stuff is just wild. We've talked a lot about how Hurts has basically had a different coordinator since really beginning of college. But then you look at the Eagles, it's basically been Who is their coordinator? With Steichen, this is great. Next year, Brian Johnson, train wreck. Kellen Moore, go back to the Super Bowl and win it. Last year with Patullo, do they even say that name in Philly anymore? Kevin Patullo?
Only when you want to replace a swear word.
Okay.
Yeah, they say it like they're spitting on the ground. Patullo.
Do you know that he is the pass game coordinator for the Dolphins this year?
I knew he was somewhere, but I also, in the back of my mind, thought, like, does it matter? Or maybe it does, because
who knows?
They're not going to be great.
Whenever they've promoted from within, bad things have happened. When they hire from the outside,
yeah, really,
good things happen.
Yeah,
it's just so weird that they hired Sean Mannion, like out of nowhere. It's not like Kellen Moore was a grab. They went out when they lost and they had to fire their OCs a couple years ago after their first round of hiring from within. They went out and they got stalwarts. They got like the best, most known commodity at DC and OC that was existing on the market. And this time they're like, let's try someone with no experience.
Sean Mannion's still in our player profiles because he was in the league like not that long ago. But yeah, he's with the Packers the last couple of years. We'll see. I've only heard great things and I'm really excited, but also I want the Eagles to be a thing. Like we all want Devontae Smith to be an alpha and to be great. So we'll see how this team does.
We are genuinely like, here's the thing. Kyle and I have always been diehard Devontae Smith fans. Like from college, like as a prospect, as a wide receiver, we love him. And then you got Betz, who's just an Eagles fan. So of course. So as a show, we are very bullish on the talent of Devontae Smith.
Wide receiver 1, baby. AJ Brown who?
Do you like which nickname do you like better? Do you like Slim Reaper or Skinny Batman, Betz?
I just like Smitty.
Smitty? Okay. He's great.
You can't do the Skinny Batman thing because that was his thing with AJ Brown. It was Swole Batman. And now we don't say that name in Philly anymore. So.
Oh, he's AJ.
Oh, yeah. he's a bad guy now. I love
the fan reaction is so funny because like half people are like hate his guts, and the other half are like, this guy was like one of the best receivers in the league for 4 straight years and been to the playoffs and put up
and you got a
unbelievable
Super Bowl
numbers, and they're like
went to 2 Super Bowls.
So always the truth
guy.
is somewhere in the middle.
Philly fans, man.
But no, I'm an AJ Brown guy.
All right, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, we are back, and we are going to play a little Dynasty ADP Price Check game. Let's get into it.
You better check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Before we get into our first name, I do want to give a little caveat about Dynasty ADP because, we're ascribing values to players based on perceived worth. We think this player is going to be worth this over a period of time, but everybody plays Dynasty a little differently. And when you look at the Ultimate Draft Kit, you can see players, you can see Jason's projections, and that's how we rank them, right? We rank them based on here's the fantasy points they will score, and these are the stat-based projections. For Dynasty, it's a little vague, and so ADP can be a little vague sometimes too. Like in the last month, if you would have asked me at the beginning of May, how much is Rashee Rice worth? I could have been like, well, he's like a top 15 wide receiver in Dynasty. Like that's what he might be talent-wise. And then based on sentiment alone, I went on a couple of sites, but one of them, he's down to wide receiver 30.
Oh,
and because the vibes obviously are very different. If we're just talking vibes, you might think Dynasty ADP doesn't change that much because it's like, all right, we're doing this over a sample size. Josh Jacobs in a week, the vibes changed very much so. And we're still waiting on if there's anything, there's nothing. He's showing up at OTAs as if it's nothing. But
business as usual.
That was the phrase, right? Business as usual.
Yeah, that was what LaFleur said.
But I just wanted to bring that up with Dynasty ADP. Like things can shift, and it also shifts based on your league mates. Like what piece of news did they hear last? And if they have Josh Jacobs and they're in a certain cycle of their team, they're like, I got to get out now. I have to get out of Josh Jacobs or I have to get out of Rashee Rice. Jason, you have Rashee Rice. Betz, don't you have him in a league as well?
I've got him in Dino Junior. Yeah.
Well, I mean, what you guys got to be terrified. Like nobody. I'm assuming you will not get a price that you think he's worth.
No, I mean, I've been terrified for like a year and a half with Rice as a dynasty manager, just knowing that he's not going to be the same fantasy value on any other team in the league. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, and if he leaves town, I think he becomes a mediocre fantasy asset. While he's on the field with Mahomes and Andy Reid and the system that they have been deploying, he is a fantasy superstar. He's like a top 5 wide receiver on a points per game basis. Now you add in just the constant headache, knucklehead issues, off-field stuff that is like, you might miss games this year. And I can't imagine that the Chiefs really want to re-sign him to the deal that he is reportedly asking for. So, in my opinion, I am hoping that no suspension comes, that the first 4 weeks of the season he is dominating, and I will trade him for whatever I can squeeze out of him.
Yeah, both these players, now is not the time to trade them. Like, you want to ebb and flow with the market and just accept, like, there will be times in the calendar year where your players, unless your league mates are, for whatever reason, asleep, you really can't trade them. Like, you're not going to get anything close to the actual value Rashee Rice is going to provide your team. So like Jason's saying, you get past training camp, you get over this knee injury. This man is literally in jail currently as of this recording. Once all of that stuff starts to kind of be in the past, you have those big games, those blow-up games, and you flip them to a contender in your league. I'm with you on that. The Rashee Rice thing is so tricky because it's like, and I agree with you on the Chiefs thing, like normally players that do what Rashee Rice has done in the first part of their career on the field, not talking about any of the other stuff, by now, they're already in contract extension negotiations, and the Chiefs have basically closed the door on that because of his off-the-field stuff. So I don't think he's a Chief long-term, quite frankly, is how I'm viewing this. I think it's more likely that he's test the open market next year, and the Chiefs are kind of done with the off-the-field stuff. So yes, I'm with you. I'm quite worried on Rashee Rice.
So let's go through the ADPs of a couple different players. The way that I did this is I took an aggregate and an average of a couple different sites. Dynasty League Football, so we have some friends that have been there for a long time. Sleeper, which we use a lot and we'll use on mock drafts for the show. And Keep Trade Cut, which is another website which is more crowd-based. I tried to take an average so that it wasn't just tied to one website. And the way that we're going to do this, I'm going to name a player, and you guys just tell me what position they are. So wide receiver X, wide receiver 10, or whatever they are. And the first player is Casey Concepcion, which I think we are all very big fans of. But in a dynasty startup, okay, you can start with a little range, like I think he's a low end this, and then we'll try to nail it. But where do you think he's going in startup ADP?
Usually this time of year, rookies and startup ADP are behind where they should be going, I think. So I'm going to guess he's very low for a first-round rookie wide receiver. I'm going to guess like wide receiver 50.
Oh, wow. I think he's going way higher than that. I'll go wide receiver.
He should be.
28.
All right. He's going as wide receiver 30. And in a super flex startup, he's like 7th, 8th round. It still feels like no man's land, if we're honest. Like if you've been in a startup and you're taking players who we have literally never seen step on an NFL field, you're taking this player to be your wide receiver 3. And that may sound exciting. We really like the profile. We've talked about him on tons of shows throughout this year. I know Mike likes him a lot as well. But it feels like no man's land when you compare it to known commodities and what else.
Who's he going next to?
Yeah,
do you have like the full ADP pulled up?
I can get you a list.
I'm curious what wide receivers would be there because you're right. When you're building a startup, it's nice to have those young guys, but it's scary if that's your wide receiver 3 to be like, I'm when you draft him in a rookie draft, he's just he starts as a bench guy on your team. He starts as your wide receiver 4 or 5, and you just hope when you grab. That's why I assumed he'd be very much lower in the startup ADP, not necessarily startup rankings.
Funnily enough, a player that's going right after him, Rashee Rice, who we just talked about, Alec Pierce, Jordan Addison, Christian Watson, Matthew Golden.
Interesting. I mean, it sounds about right. There's big question marks with all of those guys. I'm not sure who you would be thrilled to have as your wide receiver 3 on your team out of those guys. Maybe Alec Pierce because he just got the money. He's shown he could do it on the field. But obviously, we just had the debate on the main show yesterday of Alec Pierce. There's some disagreement on what he can provide for fantasy on a consistency basis. Yeah, I would probably pull the trigger on Concepcion. The first round rookie who we haven't seen versus the first round rookie from last year that we have seen be bad in Matthew Golden.
Right. I want to talk about his range of outcomes real quick. And Jason, you can look up your projections you have in the Ultimate Draft Kit for Concepcion. But Betz, kind of paint the picture of, we're at the start of the career, so all of us are kind of saying, this could be great. This could be really great. I think he can be more than a gadget player, which I think he kind of gets pegged as. So, in year one, could he lead the team in targets, or is it Fannin? I feel way more comfortable with Fannin.
I think he could. I think the most likely outcome, especially if you look at kind of what Todd Monken has done with going back to the Ravens days with the tight end years there, obviously, and Andrews and likely, the tight end position will be featured. So now that David Njoku is gone, I do think Fannin's probably more likely. I don't know what percentage I would give that probability-wise, but I would say he's probably more likely. But I wouldn't be surprised if Casey Concepcion is able to earn targets the way he did in college in an offense that outside of Fannin doesn't really have legit target earners. Whenever a new staff comes in and they get their guys, especially in round one, sure, Jerry Jeudy's on the roster, but it's Todd Monken spent the offseason reviewing the Jerry Jeudy film and said, we need better wide receivers. So he double dipped in the NFL draft with Denzel Boston. I think Casey Concepcion is on the field right away in week one as a full-time player. And so, yeah, if he is that target earner that we saw in college, I think it's possible he could lead this team in targets.
Jason, where do you have him at in terms of targets?
Yeah. In terms of targets, I've got him with 95 targets. I've got him third in the pecking order here behind Fannin and Jerry Jeudy in his rookie season. I do think it is within the range of outcomes that he leads the team in targets in year one. But obviously that's not how I project it.
His role is going to be the thing that I'm most interested in because he was a do-it-all as a freshman at NC State. And then when he transferred this past year to Texas A&M, it's he had a lot of slants, he had a lot of screens, but he still had the part of his game where he could win on the outside. He wasn't just a slot-only dude. And that's the part that if you could be more than, I'm looking at his route tree and I compared it to some NFL guys, it's please be more than Khalil Shakir. Good NFL player, got a second contract, no slight to him, but they drafted him to be more than that from the slot. Right. So can he be that group of wide receivers? I hate saying Odell Beckham, prime Odell Beckham, but him and the smaller guys who can start on the outside and win on the outside, even though they're not 6 foot plus. That's the kind of route that I think he can go, but he struggled with drops. Hopefully that's not a thing. And then hopefully they get a quarterback at some point. You're still guessing that this team is going to be somewhat competent 2 years from now and they get a quarterback. So that's kind of the hard cap for me right now of saying this is what he will be.
I will say that the trade that they just made is really, really good for the Browns. I mean, obviously losing Myles Garrett hurts, but when you're looking at this youth-filled team with Shedeur Sanders right now, either he steps up and becomes a legitimate quarterback, or they're going to have a top pick and tons of draft capital. The next couple of years, they have so much draft capital, and they have good weapons here. 2 early drafted wide receivers, Fannin. This could be a team where in a couple of years, I could see the offense being hey, this is a top half, a top third offense because of the amount of capital they have. So from a dynasty perspective, I'm a little bit more bullish on Concepcion than just my redraft outlook for this season.
Yeah, you're gonna take some lumps this year just with the quarterback play, I think. But like you said, if they can move up or get their guy next year, you could see the ceiling outcome here. Real quick, the Myles Garrett trade, we don't talk real life NFL trade outcomes very often unless it's fantasy related, but I kind of like what the Browns are doing. Myles Garrett is obviously the man. Nobody's questioning that, but it's not like Jared Verse is a bad player. Jared Verse is an awesome edge rusher, and he's only 25 years old. So to get a first, a second, and a fifth on top of it, or whatever it was.
Yeah, I mean that was a haul. I don't know how you could not take that deal because it's not like you're winning a Super Bowl in the next 2 years, and Myles Garrett's 30 years old. So it's like, what, you hold on to him so that when he's 33, and past his prime, that you take that haul. It was a great move by the
Ever
Browns.
since the Deshaun Watson contract, which it was egregious, they've done a lot of good things in the front office.
Right.
So we'll see.
Trading back last year, acquiring picks this year, even drafting Spencer Fano, trading back, like all those things. Like I feel like they're making the moves that we would say like you're building the right way.
Yes.
All right, next name I'm going to talk about is Brock Purdy, quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. In a startup, what quarterback rank is he at? So we mentioned some of the names earlier.
Too low.
What'd you say?
Too low.
Too low.
He's too low.
Okay.
He's too low. People do not give Brock, because he was the last pick in the draft. It will carry with him forever until. I mean, he is good. He's good he's good for fantasy.
His father feels that way about him.
He throws touchdowns. He throws touchdowns. Like, you look at most guys and you're like, oh, the 7% touchdown rate, that's the outlier. It's obviously going to regress back to 4%. He's like living in the high 5s, 6%. He throws touchdowns, and he's young, and he just got a monster contract. So for Dynasty, I think he's undervalued. I think he'll probably be drafted about quarterback 15.
Okay.
Which he should be a top 12 Dynasty quarterback.
I was going to say quarterback 14. That was the number that came into my mind.
All right, because we talked about Hurts earlier, and Hurts is kind of at that back end quarterback 1 range dart. He's going as a QB 13 right now. Okay, so I would say based on those sentiments you guys shared, it's like, okay, this is low enough, but when you start to stack up the names, it does get tough. Like, nobody's going to take Purdy over Jackson Dart, or right now Trevor Lawrence, who is trending in a really good direction. Bo Nix is a name that is going ahead of him that I think is an interesting name to throw out there too. And then if you're in a Superflex startup, he's going at this 3-4 turn, and depending on your strategy in Superflex, if you're doing a startup, you might be one of those people that says, hey, I'm taking my quarterback in the first round no matter what. I feel like he ends up being a value if you get him as your QB2 in the 3rd round, if you want to, play that way, because we all like Brock Purdy, and he ends up being one of those guys that just consistently throws touchdowns. The name that shows up on the list of who has the best TD rate this many games in their career, number 1 is Tony Romo, who wasn't always the sexiest quarterback, but always did put up touchdown numbers. And then it's Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Brock Purdy at 6.2%. And you guys remember what he did at the end of last year when he won me a championship in a league when he was the QB 5, 4, and 1 those final 3 weeks. So I think we all agree that...
Now you add Mike Evans?
Did I have Mike Evans?
No, I'm saying you add Mike
okay.
Evans, at least, for this year. You've got Shanahan. I really like him. I do have him 1 spot ahead of Bo Nix. And I think some people would be like, that's crazy because of the age. Bo Nix is younger, and it's like, no, he's not. They're both 26 years old. It's like they are the same age. One of them already has a guaranteed next contract. Nix runs a little bit more, but I do have him. I was looking at my rankings. I have Brock Purdy as my quarterback 12 in Dynasty.
Yeah, I like that strategy you called out, Kyle. If you were in Superflex, like there's always a demand, obviously, for quarterbacks early on in drafts. But if you wanted to take the approach of top tier skill players and snag Purdy as your quarterback 1, like I feel good about that. If you wanted to take 1 early, double dip on a couple skill guys and come back with him as your quarterback 2, obviously that's great. So yeah, he just kind of feels like a guy that in this system and in this scheme, we've just seen it, and they are a little older. So like there is some like, what does life look like after
that's the big
CMC
question.
and Kittle and Trent Williams and all those guys? But like, man, I just think about these Kyle Shanahan teams, and like he had Jimmy Garoppolo playing top tier level, right? Like Nick Mullins on a random Thursday night, like last year with Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne, like the offense is just humming. So I don't know. Kyle Shanahan is just, he's that good. And I think Purdy is that good, but people don't really give him credit for that because like Jason said, he kind of has the stigma of where he came from in the NFL draft and all that sort of thing. But when he's been on the field, he's always among the league leaders in fantasy points per dropback.
Should we just punt those fears down the road since we play 2 to 3 years at a time anyways, and just say, hey, there will be a day when Christian McCaffrey, basically the best fantasy superstar of our lifetime, retires, and Kittle's gone, and we'll deal with that then. But for right now, this is a high-end quarterback 2 or a low-end quarterback 1 in Dynasty.
Yeah, I mean, look, Kittle got injured last year, and Juwan Jennings was the guy who Brock Purdy used to be great. You know, when you were winning a championship, there was no Mike Evans. I don't remember if Kittle was injured yet at that point, but I mean, this is Shanahan scheming things open, and Shanahan's not going anywhere, and Purdy's
the
good.
Kittle injury was in the actual NFL playoffs, so it was after fantasy was done.
All right, next name that we're going to bring up, 23-year-old Omarion Hampton, running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. Where is he going in startups? What running back?
RB5.
Yeah, it's going to be high. I was thinking RB7.
Okay.
But it's going to be in that range.
You guys are both dumb. It was RB6. You guys are could not be
okay.
Could not be dumber. I was going through this task before I figured out I had the name, and I was like, okay, let me work backwards. Okay, so it's Gibbs and Bijan. They're at the very, very top. Love and Genty, they're going to be ahead of him.
Yes.
And then
then
you're trying to piece together, like, who are the names and who do you want? Do you want Achane? Which I'm totally fine if you want to put him, which he is. But then right after that, it's like James Cook, Jonathan Taylor.
It's older guys. It's three-year older guys. You're 100% right. I'm looking at my rankings, and that's exactly how it goes. It goes, those top 4 guys, and then I went Achane over Hampton. There's only a 1-year gap there. Achane's still pretty young. He's already got the next contract, and he's shown that he's great in fantasy. Hampton is still a projection. Some of the efficiency numbers were really bad in his rookie season, even though he did very good things for total fantasy points in the games he played. I'm not too scared of that because I think the offensive line issues last year were real and are gone. I love Hampton. But yeah, I mean, you almost have to have him 6. I can't imagine taking Jonathan Taylor or James Cook or Chase Brown or a Christian McCaffrey over. They're just so much older. They're so much older. I mean, the only guys that I think if you really want to call your shot on, if you wanted, it has to be one of the younger guys. You're like, no, Travion Henderson's going to be better, and I'm going to vault him way up there, or Cam Scattaboo. Ken Walker is only 25 and has a brand new contract. Like that's but to me it's Hampton.
I think it's fascinating that we're talking about Hampton and Achane going back to back in startup drafts, considering the Mike McDaniel connection here. Man, I wouldn't be surprised if Hampton flips him in ADP startup.
Or even ahead of Genty.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Just like as you get closer to the season, you think about the Chargers offense and compare it to the Dolphins offense. Like, I know that that's a redraft take, but people draft dynasty startups with what's going to happen this season in mind. And obviously, you look at the arrow of the Chargers offense and the Dolphins offense, and they're headed in complete opposite directions. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Hampton over Achane as like a consensus take. I don't know where I land on that, quite frankly, but certainly from a team level perspective this year, you got to be more excited about what's going on in LA.
I was looking at the Chargers offense as I do most days of my life. And this is...
You're literally wearing a Chargers shirt.
Literally daily. Kyle is looking at Chargers stuff.
Well, my kids asked the other day, like, do we like the Chargers more than the Falcons? And I said, today, maybe. Maybe we do. But so Mike McDaniel, his system that was like in 2023, when that was like the Raheem Mostert year. Remember, it was like Mostert scored 20 touchdowns. They were so good in like zone-based stuff. And if you look at what Hampton was really good at in college, and then what he was way better at last year, it's this man gap, Greg Roman, we're going to punch you in the mouth. And then Hampton's always been a tackle breaker. Like that was his thing at UNC. I'm just trying to figure out what this offense looks like, because there's what McDaniel did at Miami, which is just straight speed, right? Like that, we are better than anybody else. And now you look at an offensive line that's healthy, some tight ends that can block. Charlie Kohler, they brought in Njoku, a fullback who he brought over from Miami, Alec Ingold, And I'm just trying to figure.
Keaton Mitchell.
I think Keaton Mitchell is my question.
Keaton Mitchell is a real, like, if Hampton has a bad year this year for fantasy without being injured, I think Keaton Mitchell would be the reason why. He fits that type of McDaniel scheme perfectly. Blazing speed, just like lightning in a bottle. Where, I mean, you saw, like, that was the thing with Mostert too. Just because he was bigger, you don't remember how fast Mostert was. The speed there is very important to McDaniel.
I like, are the ancillary guys, like, I think Hampton can eat, but there's this thing that McDaniel loves, this obsession he has with speed, where it's like, is he going to mix in Mitchell or Vidal more than we want to, so that, like, Hampton's really, really good, but isn't like 350 opportunities. Like, he's not getting this crazy amount, and they just live off efficiency, and they rotate guys. And, like, I love this offense, but I also worry, like, is there just so many dudes that they could just keep diversifying wide receivers and running backs and tight ends?
Yeah, earlier in the offseason for redraft leagues, just looking at 2026 fantasy points, I had Hampton ahead of Genty because offensive line, offense, quarterback, all of that. I've flipped it now. I have Genty ahead. I'm more and more bullish on Genty as we go along, and it's really the opportunities. If you told me that both of these guys get 350 opportunities, I would take Hampton. I would take the offense, the touchdown upside. But I'm far more confident in one of those guys actually getting 350 opportunities, and it's Genty.
I think I agree with that. Yeah, I think I agree with that. Some of the best teams in the league, it doesn't feel that way for us in fantasy because we obviously want everything to be for our guys on our roster and nobody else. But, like, some of the best teams have this ability to rotate that wide receiver and rotate at running back and give you 3 or 4 different looks in a game from a personnel standpoint. And I think that's what we're getting with the Chargers. So, like, I could see weeks where we're frustrated with the Chargers offense in fantasy, yet they're still a very, very good offense and they're a very good team for real life NFL purposes. Obviously, it'll all come back to Herbert, from top down perspective. But I do think at least like in the short term, Vidal and Keaton Mitchell stuff, not that they're going to take like major work necessarily, but maybe just enough to kind of be annoying. Like I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, I think Mitchell's a really fun stash that you're not like counting on to be a thing, but it wouldn't surprise me if he had these spike weeks. Probably a better in best ball, dynasty best ball format, but definitely a fun player that he signed because he has this obsession with speed. So should be an interesting name. Let's take a quick break, and then we will talk about Rome Odunze. Jason, as your friend,
yeah, tell me.
The other day on the main show, Mike just set it up. They had an Explain Yourself episode on the main podcast, and he was throwing punches right away. And what I really wanted you to do, Jason, is I wanted you to fight dirty. I wanted you to just go for the gonads right there on the show.
Just shank them.
Yeah, just something that, like, shock and awe, that, like, hey, that's not fighting fair. But because I know you. But you took it like a man. You responded the way that you should in terms of Rome Odunze versus Luther Burden. I want you to develop that conversation a little bit more. We can talk about the dynasty outlook because I'm telling you, redraft people love Luther Burden. Dynasty people the pants have been off for a while. And considering I have him on my team, I'm excited too. So where do you think Rome Odunze is going in dynasty startup?
Man, I know in redraft he's about wide receiver 30, but he is young, a top 10 pick, so I would imagine he's got to be ahead of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say he has fallen to wide receiver 23.
I was going to say wide receiver 25.
He is still the wide receiver 16 in dynasty.
That shocks me, honestly.
Where's Burden?
So Burden, let me pull this up. So Burden, as much as we love Burden, we know that he hasn't fully done it yet. Let's see. Burden is wide receiver 20.
Interesting. I wonder if that will flip because it's flipped in redraft. And if you think that Burden is going to outscore Rome this year, he is younger. he should be drafted. I mean, that makes no sense to have a redraft burden ahead. I'm going to take the bird in hand, which is the wide receiver that we've seen have plenty of dominating games. Rome dominated so many games last year before that foot injury. I'm curious, Kyle, you help make the cases on the Explain Yourself episode. You built the case against him. You also listened to both. You have Burden. You are an intelligent football mind. Where do you genuinely stand on the Burden Rome? I have not heard your take once.
I think the redraft conversation, I'm completely on your side. He's way too cheap right now for what he can do, and I still think he's the one. That's how. Okay,
that's my question: is who do you think is the wide receiver one for the Bears?
I think he's the one. I think that there is an outcome that Mike is kind of bringing up and touching. Like, this isn't just like a good wide receiver for the Bears. Like, this could be like a top 5 for years, whispering like names like Antonio Brown type of wide receivers. That's where Mike is coming from.
You're saying Luther Burden.
That's Betz. What do you think?
I just want to say, Mike comping Rome to Darius Hayward-Bay and Michael Floyd was nasty work, man. Come on, Mike.
Yeah, you want to talk? Someone's doing dirty
when
work.
I heard
that
those names,
disgusting.
I was like, oh no, he did not. Which obviously is, you want to make the point. You want to make your point as strong as you can. You pick the most obvious top 10 busts you can.
I blame Kyle 100%
and the Kevin White
for that.
The Kevin
obviously
White
being a Bears pick was just so good. So hat tip to Mike for that. Honestly, Colson Loveland. Like, genuinely, that is my stance. I think this offense will run through Colson Loveland, and I think that's probably a contrarian take. But I just go back to like what happened down the stretch, and the same conversation with Rome with the foot injury and how healthy he was. Like, obviously, he was not healthy down the stretch for the last like 2 months of the season. He was playing through a stress fracture in his foot. You're not going to be 100%. But I keep coming back to like in the playoffs, like they're designing routes for Loveland with the game on the line. Like I think I've felt this way for a while about him. I think he's truly a special player. And I do think he could ascend to be like one of the few tight ends in the league that leads their team in targets. So truthfully, that's where I stand. But on the Rome versus Luther Burden thing, it's so tricky, man. Because like I tend to buy into these target earner type archetypes, but I still think there's a possibility. I don't know what percentage it is, but there's a possibility that he's not like a true 90% of the routes type of player.
Burden?
Yeah, Burden. Whereas like with Rome, I know for sure he's on the field and he won't leave outside of injury. So, it's tough.
The nice
Colson
thing,
Loveland forever and always.
The nice thing for Burden, like I can see a world where I could paint a picture where it's like, okay, you really do have Loveland and Odunze as the primary targets. They're soaking up the vast majority, 55% of all targets go to those two players. And then thank you. And then Luther Burden is just more of a gadgety use, get some screens and that use case. But the depth chart at wide receiver for the Bears puts Luther Burden on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. Like, I don't think he's going to be more of the slot guy, not playing the majority of snaps, simply because who's taking him off the field? Khalif Raymond?
Hey.
Xavier Thomas?
That's Lions legend, Khalif
Ja'Day
Raymond.
Walker? Yeah, sure. So, that's where, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, the Bears are probably going to be the most interesting team to watch. To see, like, what is it?
Yeah.
How good are they? Can Caleb be a 4,000? Can Caleb be a 4,500 yard thrower? I mean,
60% of his passes. That's what we're asking.
Yeah. So yeah, it's fascinating. I went to look at my stats because I was curious. I'm also with you, Betz, that I'm in very much so on Loveland. I think he could be one of those tight ends that leads his team in targets. And I was just curious, like, did I have him leading the league in targets? Because I took a serious look when I was statting out the Bears at all the times that the 3 were healthy on the field together. Loveland was, during that time, including the playoffs, he was dominating the targets. he was up over 30%, which is outrageous. That's great for a wide receiver. That's like a guaranteed top 12 wide receiver in fantasy. And so for a tight end, it was great. But during those times, Rome was very hurt. And I have Rome at 132 targets and Loveland at 124. So I do have Rome leading the team in targets. But just barely.
I really like the script writers for our show because this Jason, Odunze, Mike Burden thing, like it's kind of like bubbled up to be a thing that will keep going. Like it's not just like we brought it up in the offseason. Hey, that was fun. Like this is going to keep being a thing.
Nah, yeah, for sure.
You've chosen your sides. I will say that I used a stat that said how bad Odunze was when Burden was on the field. The flip side of that is you could do the same thing when Odunze's on the field and Burden's on the field at the same time. I mean, Luther Burden, his yards per out run was like 1.52. Like it wasn't good either. So the part of this equation that we're having to kind of wrestle with is take DJ Moore out. How does this offense now function when like, here's how we looked at all the targets for the first month of the year and Odunze was great. Here's how we looked at the targets down the stretch when DJ Moore was still there in the playoffs. So
I will say that the DJ Moore targets to me are Luther Burden targets.
okay.
Like I think that the type, the role, the screen game, I think that'll be Luther Burden.
All right. So,
but it wasn't like DJ Moore. DJ Moore had 50 catches. It's not like we're taking 125 catches and distributing them to the rest of the team.
Right. There's about 17% of the targets were like, okay, here's how we distribute these. Here's how we figure out how to do it. The dynasty bow that I want to put on Odunze is wide receiver 16. He's going late in the fourth in a super flex startup. Would you feel excited to have him as your wide receiver 2 in Dynasty? Because that's what he would be for your team.
I would be because I believe he is the alpha.
Bet.
You will be if he is the alpha. There is certainly a world.
Okay.
You'll be happy if Jason's right.
There is certainly a world where he is whoever is the number 3 target on this team will be a massive crushing disappointment in fantasy because they're all being drafted like they are going to be really good, and all 3 are not going to be really good for fantasy.
I love thinking because it feels like an either or I need to choose sides, or if this happens, this happens. There is another fourth door, which is
don't say this, Kyle. People are gonna get mad.
No, it's
They're gonna
true.
get really mad at you.
They just suck. No, I don't know.
No, the fourth door is that all 3 are bad for fantasy, regardless.
Right, they could be good. Like they could be a winning team.
The offense could be good, and the way that happens is very realistic. The way that happens is that all 3 players are good in the NFL, have plenty of stats at the season's end, and had the worst consistency scores imaginable. This game is a Rome game. That game is a Luther game. This game is a Loveland game. And you play them in the wrong spots. You think you can rely on them. They goose you the next game. It could be a catastrophe where all 3 are good, but because all 3 are good, no one is good reliably. That's my biggest fear with the Bears.
Agreed.
I mean,
that's possible.
Fantasy is fascinating. I was having a conversation with a friend today of like, there's parts that feel so easy. There's parts that feel really complex. And then there's parts that's like week to week. This is how it actually plays out in the NFL of like Caleb ran in a score, backup tight end catches a touchdown, and then it's Burden with a 100-yard game. And you're like, what happened to Colston Loveland this week? And you're like, I did not see this coming. He got 6 targets, and yet he was 3 for 45. Like those are the range of outcomes week to week. And we're trying to project in Dynasty.
Knowing that is possible, we always want to think about the best case. Like
just
like
log
you said,
out, man.
Either
just
or.
Log out.
You think it's yes or no. You think it's like this guy or that guy. Knowing that is possible right now, if you have Luther Burden, there is an unbelievable amount of value that you have on your roster. I'm not saying trading him away is a great move for everybody, but there are going to be leagues where you can get a haul for a player who we're extrapolating a very small sample size on. And he was a good prospect, right? Like he wasn't like the best prospect, but he was pretty good as a prospect. And now we're taking like, a short time frame and saying, well, what if he's this? Like, and if you're somebody that likes to avoid risk on your team and you want to just maximize return in Dynasty, I don't think putting him on the trade block is the craziest idea in the world. You probably can get a huge haul back right now.
You could get a haul of hauls for a player who hasn't done it yet. And
high risk,
that's
high
not
reward.
to say he won't do it. Yeah, for sure.
So you think like if somebody like mid-show like literally just put him on the trade block, like as you were literally saying that, they could get.
Did you just do
that?
that?
Oh yeah,
Kyle?
I was doing it. Like as he started like churning as the wheels of the train, I was like, I know where this is going. So
What league is this in?
Dino Jr. But
Okay.
I'm rebuilding. He's perfect for the squad. He's great. I did want to finish this out one final name, and I'm going to continue on our Bears train because the name I had for us was Kyle Monangai, a guy that I don't really know what he is. Like I don't know in Dynasty. In redraft, you could say this is a bench stash. This is a flex, maybe flex with benefits. It's all of that. A 7th round pick that last year ran for 783 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had a monster game in week 9 where Ben Johnson was a sicko. Swift was out. He saw the ball 31 times, and he was actually pretty good efficiency-wise. But in Dynasty, no idea what he is a year from now.
You know why he was so efficient in that game, Kyle?
Because Swift was out?
He played the Bengals.
Well, okay.
I know what Kyle Monangai is. He's absolutely worthless.
Really? Now,
Wow, shots fired.
people in startups think that.
Probably.
Because
I mean, you're saying the ADP price check?
I'm
guessing
it shocked me.
It shocked you? He's not in the 20s. Is he in the 20s?
No.
Kyle. Running back 26?
Betz?
I was going to guess like RB 45.
Okay. He is the RB
Wow.
26.
Oh, on the
Yeah,
button.
I know.
That's crazy.
So here's why I'm low on Monangai. He had his games and he had his touchdowns, but he wasn't really a special player. He wasn't truly efficient. Some of the better metrics to look at for how good a running back are.
I can't wait to counter you, Jason.
Okay, I don't think he was that great, and there are metrics that
of course
say that he wasn't that good. I mean, I'm sure there's metrics that say everything. This is a team that has, for the last couple of years, been heavily rumored at taking one of the big running backs in a draft, going to one of the big running backs on the free agent market. It hasn't worked out that way for them, and it's fine, but that's coming. DeAndre Swift is going to be a free agent, and I think this next offseason, they're going to go get a dude. They're not going to, they're going to want to do what the Lions did. You look at how they've built this team. They're just kind of like doing the same thing. Let's focus on the offensive line first. Fix it. Ben Johnson comes in, they do that. Let's get the offensive passing weapons. Good. We've got that going. Now let's find our Jahmyr Gibbs. I think they want to do that. And so my take is that next offseason, the Bears are going to go get a star running back, and that will make Monangai not a flex with benefits. That will make him an insurance back. I mean, any backup can be good if the starter gets injured. Outside of that, I don't think that Monangai. I mean, I certainly wouldn't be drafting him as running back 26. This is a 7th round running back.
Agreed.
This team is not committed financially, investment-wise. They're only committed depth chart-wise, and they don't like the depth chart. That's what's going to change.
This is why startup ranks or rankings in general for Dynasty do not tell the full story. I would love to have Kyle Monangai for 2026 on my bench as a potential flex. I would be terrified to draft him in a startup at RB 26 compared to some other names, because the range of outcomes is you just drafted a player where in 2027 you're like, oh my gosh, they got their Gibbs. They got whoever. That's so I wanted to bring that up because this team was awesome at running the ball. And towards the end of the year, it truly was a 50-50 split. Mike and I spent the morning, for real, talking about DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai because Mike is having unhealthy thoughts about DeAndre Swift. And as his friend, I've tried to direct him in the right path. But will it be a 50-50 split this year? That's the question. But in Dynasty circles, I don't think this is a pick that you should be taking in the 9th round of your startup, because a year from now, if you're in a league right now, if you want to throw him in on a trade, that's what I would prefer. but like startup is terrifying.
I mean, I thought he would be going off the board at RB45. So the fact that he's going at this price to me is like crazy. So I agree with you guys. But at the same time, like you said, could he have standalone value? Possibly. Obviously, if Swift goes down, you have massive value on your squad. So if you already have him from last year and like you took him in the 4th round of a rookie draft or something, like great, just sit on that for a while and kind of let the season play out. But if there's a window to be like, hey, Swift's out, go trade this guy, like I'm doing that for sure, because I agree with you guys. I do think they invest heavily in the running back position sometime in the next year.
Startup rankings, when you get to about RB30, and I mean, Jason could like look at his ranks, but like there's a massive cliff after that where it's like Jonah Coleman, no idea what that guy is. Nicholas Singleton, same thing. Bill, J.K. Dobbins, Kenneth Gainwell, Tony Pollard. It's like all these guys are around that 30 range, so they're going behind him. Maybe they're more valuable a year from now, but like you're just shooting your shots in startup drafts. So I get why people are aggressive, but I just, this is no man's land. This is like a spot in your drafts that like you're just hoping you get some Rico Dowdle, Jonathan Brooks. These are all names that are basically going around him, and they're kind of in the same bucket or tiers. So when we do episodes in July, we go through the tiers, the Dynasty tiers. That's how we really talk about players. And when you kind of bucketed Betz, you're like, he's like 40-ish, 45. Like, that's probably where he belongs, but who knows a year from now. So last thought, Jason, DeAndre Swift. Do you think that Mike is having unhealthy thoughts?
No, I think Mike is having wise thoughts. Swift is the better player. The split was not 50-50. I'm looking at the last 9 weeks after.
I did week 12 on.
Yeah, so, the thing is Swift is usually more involved in the passing game, had more snaps, had more opportunities. I mean, I guess I didn't look at just the very, very end of the year, but I do think Swift is their primary guy, and Swift is literally always an RB2. He's never not been an RB2 in his entire career. So I'm pretty confident that at the end of this year he'll be an RB2, and usually he's drafted after that in drafts. People don't want him, so I don't believe that Mike looks at Swift as like an RB1. I don't think he's viewing him like, hey, he's got this massive upside. I think he's just seeing a value because he is being drafted behind where he's almost certainly going to finish, and he's decently consistent, isn't he? Like, what's his consistency score?
Last year we had a B.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. For a guy that's, usually, like, I'm seeing him at the 5-6 turn in startups right now, or not Dynasty startups, but just in redraft. I mean, to get a guy that's pretty much a guaranteed RB2 who's pretty consistent, like in the 6th round, where it's usually just the dead zone.
Who's going ahead in Dynasty startups?
For these two
Monangai
guys?
or Swift?
No.
I think it's still Swift.
Is he really?
It has to be.
It's split on
Swift.
Different sites. This is the whole point of bringing up this conversation. I was like, I get it and I don't get it, and I don't.
So what are your you said you wanted to counter me saying that he wasn't very good. What are your stats that you have to like sell us on Monangai? I've been very negative on Monangai. Change my mind.
Right, from week 12 on, it was basically a 50-50 split. 52% of the attempts and targets were Swift, 48% were Monangai. So it's as close to 50-50 as we can get. In terms of...
Well, you can get 50-50. That's the closest.
In terms of 5+ yard gains, which is actually more predictive than the explosive stuff, same exact rate as Swift and second best in the entire NFL. 43% of his carries went for 5+ yards. And depending on your site you want to look at, like yards after contact, a lot of stuff, it was better on some sites, and then Monangai was worse on others. Like my point is, for a 7th round guy, he was pretty good to impressive to me. And when they gave him the opportunity, I know it was the Bengals, but like 30 carries is like a sick thing to do to his 7th round rookie, Ben Johnson. And then down the stretch, he still saw work.
Swift was also gone.
Yeah, I'm just saying, but like 30 carries for a 7th round rookie is not normal. It's happened once since 1991, and it was Monangai. Like it just doesn't happen. So my point is bringing up is like, I think Swift was way better. I agree. But Monangai wasn't like some schlub that like did not put together meaningful carries. And this team had the 6th most rushing yards in the entire league. He was a huge part of that. 783 yards for a rookie as a part-time player is impressive. So I think he's a better in redraft flex, and in Dynasty, I'm scared. That's like where I'm landing. And a year from now, I agree. They will draft somebody really cool next year, and Monangai will be like, oh yeah, remember when he had that cool little moment? That's my thought.
Yeah, probably. I think he's a solid back who fits the scheme well, but isn't an irreplaceable talent. That's how I would put it.
Yeah. For a 7th round dude, proud of him.
Monangai.
We need him to be good for that.
That alone matters. If you want to see all of our Dynasty startup ranks, you can find them in the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus. You can find them in the app. If you're scrolling on the toilet and you're like, hey, what's Jason's ranks on this player? As most people have thoughts, they can do that. So, ultimatedraftkit.com. We will be back next week. Spoiler alert, we are doing a startup mock on the draft. So we'll see you there next week.
Fun.
Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.